Okay.
Right, welcome back everybody. Hopefully you've done all your need to do, and we're all ready for going in a few minutes. So we're up to about 10. It's showing me 10 at the moment, so I don't know exactly what we've got coming, so we'll just chat for a few minutes. Who's back at the moment? Neil, Graham H, Michael Hudston, pleased you're still with us, Michael. Hope all's well this evening. Ray, Graham H, still fairly well down the list there, Graham H. He wasn't, you're certainly not getting the front seats these days. Jill's back, Caroline and Dave's back. Caroline's done the dishes, walked the dog, and poured the wine. I hope that's 2 glasses, 1 glass for each of you, Dave and Caroline. So I must admit, I've just been and got a glass of something as well. So right, who else is here? Jim, Pete Curry, Tony, Paul Walker. So people are coming back. We'll just give people 3 minutes, just up to 10 past, and then we'll certainly make a start. So we're cooking with gas at the moment, and I must admit, I'm sure you'll all agree that it was a good start, and I think we can all say we've learned a little bit as well. Must admit, I enjoy doing the black and white, but I'm not particularly brilliant at it, so picked up a few tips and tricks there. So who else is just popping in? People are popping in all the time now. So Paul's back, Tony's back, Diva's back, Sue's back. Graham H, thought you'd muted, GD, forgot to put my headphones on. Yeah, if you're listening through headphones, you've got to put them on. So Bob's back. Bob's no doubt, oh yes he has, he says he's refueled, so a drop more of the brown stuff. Mark's back. Oh, his is a G&T. I must admit, Mark, I'll be honest with you for once, I've gone for a whiskey and coke. So seeing as I'm not saying anything tonight much, I can have a drink, so I can just leave Brian to do the talking. So Viv's back, so welcome. Right, we're up to 20 now, and we've just got the numbers building back up again. So as you can see, Brian and I are back on the screen there. So what I'll do, we are up to 21, so I'm going to hand you, Paul, raspberry and peach. Oh, Paul's gone for the water option, raspberry and peach tea. And Gail's joined us, so Gail this evening, she's no doubt been out for a walk. So oops, we've gone to a bit of blackness there for a minute. But we're all back at the moment now, so let me just find my pointer, and what we'll do, without further ado, I'm going to get rid of myself, hand you over to Brian again. Over to you, Brian.
Well, let's hope we're at the right screen. Can you see the right screen there? Is that the menu?
No, I've still got you.
Still got me. Okay, I need to go back and share myself again then, don't I?
Yep.
Which is here, and then share my screen, entire screen, share.
That's showing me. There you go. That's it.
Okay, so we've gone to the right place.
Yep.
Okay. Right, they asked me to do 2 other possible things. One doesn't work. I mean, the attractions and distractions was one thing they asked me to talk about. But unfortunately, I need to be able to see your faces to know whether it's working or not with that one. So that one doesn't work in this kind of format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about positive and negative space for a little bit. Let me know whether it's suitable. If not, we can always change your mind. Okay.
Lovely. Yeah.
Okay, positive and negative space. When you doing photography, we get a lot of judges come along and they talk about good use and negative space. And when we're looking, it's usually a blank space, and it doesn't have to be. This is one of the things about negative space. It's a bit of a strange thing. So let's just talk a little bit about it. Okay. So before I go on to there, I'd just like to go through some of Gestalt principles. Now, Gestalt's principles are psychological principles about how we view things, and certain things that we tend to look for in an image. And the first one of Gestalt's principles was this principle of equilibrium. And this is explaining how we're always in search of a balance when we're looking at an image. We're trying to make things sort of balance out somehow. And the rule of thirds is a good example of using balance. So if you place your horizon on the lower third, for instance, that usually means you've got an interesting sky with a relatively boring foreground. And the interesting sky sort of balances the small amount of foreground, because there's not much interest there. And similarly, you can do it the other way around. If you've got a very interesting foreground, you can put your horizon on the upper third, and using a relatively boring sky to go with it to balance again. So it's this idea of balancing the two elements together. The next thing that he introduces is the idea of closure. And closure, this is when a judge turns around and says, I wish you'd included that piece of his ear or something like that. Or the white bike isn't, full wheel isn't there. But everybody knows what a damn wheel looks like, so what's it matter? You know, this is the thing. You can complete that wheel. You know it's a wheel. I mean, one of the classic things I've seen with this one is where they show you a CD. You can see the label, you can see 2/3 of the curve, but you can't see the rest of it. But you know damn well it's a CD, and you know where it goes, so it doesn't really matter. So this idea of closure is something that is always worth considering. If you do it by just missing a tip, you'll probably get pulled up on it. If you do it by chopping the chunk off, you'll probably get away with it. Proximity, I'm going to talk a little bit about more about that in a minute, but if I just say railings coming out of heads, that'll do for the time being. And continuation, this is the idea that if you've got a path in a picture, whether it's a real path or a perceived path, doesn't really matter, you will tend to follow it to see what's down that path. And the nice thing about this continuation idea is that if you've got a straight line, you'll go down it very quickly. If you have a meandering line, it will take you a long time to get down there, and it'll encourage the viewer to look at your images for a little bit longer. Figure and ground, that comes from art. Basically, they're saying that the subject is your figure, and where it is sat is the ground. Very simple. There's just two elements. It's not quite as simple as that with most images, but that's what it boils down to. And similarly with positive and negative space. The positive space is the subject, and the negative space is the background. So I'm actually going to talk about negative space first of all, and then I'm going to talk about figure and ground, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about proximity. So let's see where we go from here. I like to throw a quote in occasionally. I know it's a monochrome image, it's just pure luck, but it's an Ansel Adams, so it's got to be a good one, hasn't it? Yep. The thing about Adams is he says that the most important component of the camera is the 12 inches behind it, meaning you. It's all about making decisions as far as I'm concerned. When you're out with a camera, you decide what you're going to include, you decide what you're going to do, what you want the viewer to look at. You have to make all these decisions. This is where it gets beyond just picking your camera up and pointing it somewhere, but you have to be very conscious about what you're doing. You look around the edges, you see what's there, you look where the subject is, you look if there's anything around the edges that's going to distract things from your viewer looking in, and you have to really pay a lot of attention to what's going on. As I say, it's being able to see rather than just look, and actually a bit of anticipation goes in with it as well. So figure and ground. Framing, I've got another chapter on framing, but framing is the area that you select and where you choose to put your frame effectively. So framing this image has put the bird relatively central, and then you've looked around the edges, you've got support there for it to stand on, you've got something dark around here to push the eye in, again to concentrate your eye on the bird. And it's... When you're using a viewfinder, it is the viewfinder that forms your frame, and you have to work that area. When it's a print, it's the edges of your print that becomes the frame, and you have to work within that area. And do bear in mind that not necessarily do the two areas match up. Quite often you'll choose to make a print which is only part of the original frame. Our brains are always processing visual information, and they're very good at it. We start at a very early age, and we learn to sort of work out what's going on very, very quickly. And do bear in mind that when we put it from what we see to an image on a screen or anything else, it has gone from 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions. And we need to give a certain amount of visual clues that allow us to distinguish between the third dimension, something that generates it. In this particular case, it's the darkness in the background. It's suggesting that the darkness is further away from us than the bird. Well, the other thing that we've become very good at is actually identifying a subject within an image. We can sort of recognize the basic shapes, and as we go along, we learn more shapes, and we sort of see them, pick them out. So the shape or form is what serves as the focus of our image. And in this case, it's the bird, and we call that the figure in the art term. And the surroundings, which is all the negative space, is known as the ground. And we have to work on a bit of a balance between the two to make sure that the interest really is the subject and the shape, rather than the background, which becomes rather distracting. All right, so negative space is traditionally in photography, I think, classed as empty space. Well, I'm not so sure about that. I think I prefer to think of it as non-subject space, and it's how we handle that non-subject space, and also how much we can tolerate within a particular image. In this case, I have got for a relatively bland background, again allowing the bird to stand out within it. And there's a fair amount of detail in there. There is some sort of tones in the background. I think that sort of is far better in some respects than being completely bland. I think also the fact that it is very dark compared to the subject also helps in this particular case. The thing about when they talk about empty space, it isn't actually empty. There is things there, and it's a case of how you've treated that those elements, whether you've used depth of field and reduced them to blurs or what, or whether you've toned them down. There are different ways of making sure that the background isn't so distracting. When we're taking photographs, we're trying to guide the viewer where to look. And negative space is just one of the techniques we can use to sort of guide them. In this particular image, there's no doubt you're going to notice the dark area around here, but it's generally going to push you into the eyes and the nose. And you're going to examine this area here first of all. And it's more, going back to attractions and distractions, I talk about the weight of elements in the image, visual mass, and eyes, faces, have a very high visual mass. They're at the top of the list of things to see first. So in some respects you can forget about this leading line here. I don't think there is one. I don't think you need one. I think the fact there's some eyes there, that will attract you as a viewer straight away.
Can I just ask you that something there, Brian?
Yeah, of course.
We had a couple of chats among the members, and one of them said judges never seem keen on negative space, and another member sort of said true, and one of the newer members, who's been with us sort of 18 months or so, or a year or so, he just said, why do judges not like a lot of negative space?
Just hang on. I think this is depending on individual judges. This is where the equilibrium comes in, to be quite honest with you. It's making sure I've got some images where I've got a ladybird, which is the positive space mostly, and a lot of foliage, which is the negative space. But because there is a small amount of red in a whole mass of green, you still need no doubt as to where you're supposed to look. So I think this idea of how much is, it's interesting. It's trying to work out in your own mind what actually balances and what doesn't, what works and what doesn't. And I go for all sorts of different combinations. I like to sort of experiment a bit, and I like to push judges to think about if they've got things to say about them, rather than just going down the old route of it doesn't work because it's, whatever.
Yeah, I do think that, like you do judging yourself and I do, and I think you can get two individual judges to judge the same image, and we can both have different perspective on the image and
right.
whys and what fors.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the problems. I mean, people sort of seem to think that judging an image, it's an absolute. It isn't. It depends on an awful lot of things, to be quite honest with you. In some respects, sometimes it depends on what the range of competition is. Other times it depends on how you feel. There's all sorts of contributing factors can come into how a judge will score an image. And I think there is an element of luck in it, but generally speaking, the better images do tend to win.
Yeah.
Even if the scores differ.
Yeah. Thank you.
Near enough?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so in this image, we'll talk about the positive and negative space in this image. The background is busy, but that doesn't really matter because there's still a subject there, and there's the subject. So that is the positive space, and the bit around it, which is the bit that's left now, is the negative space. We're not worried about whether it's clear or whatever, as long as that gives us the positive and negative space as separate entities like that. We don't care as long because we've left in no doubt where we're supposed to look, because the negative space, although it isn't bland, is pushing us in there. As again, say most judges don't class that as negative space; they just talk about background, but really it is negative space. As long as there's no distraction. Now, I think I had to remove something in the back here somewhere because there was a place where you could see through the trees or something. So I just put a bit of extra foliage in there to make sure there was no bright spots in it. And there's a little bit of a distraction down here as well. I think on another version I've actually got rid of that branch, that piece of grass there as well. But yeah, overall I've left it as it is. Now this is an image where you say, well, okay, which is the positive and which is the negative space? We've got a very strong silhouette against a very interesting sky. Well, okay, it depends how you see this. Some people will see that as a strong silhouette, and some people will see it as an interesting sky. And this is another situation which is fairly similar. It's the illusion situation. Some people will see the left-hand side as two faces. Some people will see it as a candlestick. On the right-hand side, somebody will see it as a face. Another person will see it as a wolf. And it depends how your brain functions as to which way you see these things. And a similar sort of thing is applying to this previous image as to whether you see the sky or whether you see the house silhouette. It's interesting to look at that and then wonder what's going on.
What happens when I see both the vase and the faces?
Sorry?
What happens when I see both the vase and the faces and the wolf and the head?
I think you'll probably oscillate between them.
I was going to say, does that mean I'm really clever?
I'll go for that one, Graham. That's a good one. Especially since I see the same as well. I'm going to agree with that. Like I say, some people can't see these sort of things, but most of the time you can. It's just this, whether you're a person that goes for your negative space first or your positive space. And it depends which one you see first, basically. I think actually when I look at the one on the left, I see faces first, which would go along with Gestalt as saying faces are more dominant than objects. On the right-hand side, I'm struggling to know which way I see that one first. I think the face is becoming dominant, even though the wolf is there.
Yeah. Okay,
so here's an image which is all positive space. There's nothing negative about it because there's nothing specific in the middle there. there's nothing wrong with it. If you put it into a competition, I'm sure a judge will say it's far too busy, I don't know where to look. Another image will say, the character will say, oh, that's nice, I can explore that image and look round there, I can see what's going to be for sale, and you can spend some time looking at it. So there's all sorts of different ways of treating it, but basically there is nowhere for the eye to settle, and that's what makes it all positive space. If anything, I might settle on this bottom right-hand corner here, but it's because there's so much text around, which is another thing that has got very high visual weight. I'm spending all my time reading all this stuff up here and looking what's on the shelves and seeing what's there. It's not an image I'm going to go bypass very quickly. How far it's going to get in the competition is a different matter. But that doesn't really matter. Remember, we don't take our images for competition. We take our images because we find them interesting. This one here, very simplified. The steer's head on a very white background. There is no information in the background, so there's nothing to distract them. But what the background does, it actually gives a three-dimensionality to the shape itself. It's because the shadows on it and things like that, you get the impression that it's standing out rather than just a two-dimensional image. Here, the negative space actually contributes. It gives you an idea where it is. You know it's probably not in a safari park or anything. You probably think it's going to be in a zoo, possibly a nature park, which it is. It's at Chester Zoo, because you've left this, or at least I've left this fencing in here, and all this grasswork doesn't really look where you expect rhinos to be. So there's things that go against it and things that go around it. But this is the positive space. These two in the front here, and that is the negative space around the outside. Now, when we talk about proximity, these two become the subject because they are close to each other. They're overlapping, so you can't separate them. It's not him or her that's the subject, and the calf that's the background. They're both becoming the subject because they do overlap. There's nothing particularly distracting. You might find that a little bit distracting down there, but it's not too bad. Now this here is fairly obvious that the subject is here, the owl, and the rest of it is negative space. But it's all in focus. Does that matter? For me, no. It's still that this is the positive and negative space. And again, the small amount of white is being balanced by the beautiful textures on this blue wood either side. And a bit of darkness in the background are helping to separate him from the ultimate background there. So I think that's working quite well as well. And the viewer's left in no uncertainty where to look, and that's important in your images. You've got to make sure that the viewer sees it. Partially this one is texture versus the textures here and the colours, and also about the contrast between the background and the foreground. Another way you can distinguish them is to actually have high contrasting colours. So here we've got the orange and red against the green, and that is really making things stand out, rather like this one. Let's go back to that one. Although it's this sort of out of focus, it's a bit mottledy, it might be distracting, but it's all sort of shapes that don't really matter too much. I think generally speaking, you sort of might get a little bit bouncing backwards and forwards between those two areas, but I think overall that is working reasonably well. You've got a bit of a lead in through this way and half and half image, but yeah, I don't think the background is too distracting. You'll have to make your own mind up on that one. This one here, we've gone for more out of focus. Beautiful detail in the pom-pom head here. Lots of plenty colour and the same sort of colour combination, orange with the green. Some purpley bits, patches in here. Does that matter? Not really. It's nicely well out of focus. Now then, balance in this one. This one doesn't have a lot of negative space, and the negative space doesn't carry information, and so that's one of the reasons why I've actually cropped it quite tight, because there is no information around it, and there is no real point. I mean, we've got a little bit of space, extra space on this side for the eye, but if you notice, his eye is pointing down to about that position, and that's one of the guides I would use for where to crop, is where the eye is pointing to. So in some respects, it's coming right down into that corner, and that has suggested that the crop goes round here. I've left slightly less space at the back end, technically because he's going that way, but it's not too much worry because he's dead, so he's not going to go anywhere. But, anyway, that's the reason I cropped that one quite tight. This one, I'm beginning to leave a bit more space around it, and again, we've got some nice detail in here with the lack of detail around there. So this is a sort of almost 2/3 part of it to 1/3, but the darker subject is pushing your eye into this area and making you examine all the fronds around here. So I think that's working reasonably well. So the balance is working still. I mean, that one we've got very good there, but I still think it's balanced. This one here, we've got a bit more space around it. Again, I think it's still balanced. But I think I can go further than that if I remember rightly. This is another one where the only bit that's sharp is across this edge. And every time I've entered this into a competition, the judge says, "Oh, I wish I could see that bit." And to be quite honest with you, that's the boring bit. There is nothing in there. The texture's around here. That's why I left it as it is. But notice, we've got this small area at the bottom with this huge area at the top. Bit of yellow there, which I probably should have taken out, but not worry about that at this point in time, because that's where the focus is, and this is the negative area around it. And it's only really that the sliver there that is the focus. Getting slightly smaller still. I've increased the negative space on this one, because what I'm really hoping you're going to spot is the 3 bugs on the right hand side here. Oh, sorry, 5. There's 2 more there. Plenty of bugs on this. It's a stance to structure, I think. And the green in the background again is focusing the attention around here. That is off soft. Does it matter? I don't think so. It wants to be soft behind this one, so you get the distinction between the two. But again, we're getting bigger and bigger with the negative spaces. So when you started asking about how much negative space is too much, I don't think there's a limit providing the subject works. Gone even further this time. And again, for me, that's no problem. I'm not saying it's going to do well in a competition or anything, but I have no problem with that. We've got this beautiful subject in what I think Michael Freeman calls the extreme position in the bottom right-hand corner, leaving the rest of the image blank. And that seems to work quite nicely for me. You could even probably cropping it a little bit further down, come through the whiskers if you did. Interesting enough, if you swap it over, make a difference.
Yep, definitely.
Big difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which one do you prefer?
I prefer it on the left-hand side, because as we always say, technically we read from left to right, so I'm just reading the image as the meerkat looking into the empty space.
I translate it slightly different. I actually prefer that one, and the reason being that if I look at this image, I go across to the meerkat and I come back into the image, but I'm always heading to the right because, as you say, we lead left to right, so I find myself being forced back into the image. With this one, I find I tend to try to escape more.
Right, yeah.
That's my interpretation. Yeah. Everybody's going to be different. It'd be interesting to see how many other people come across with it. I think that one pushes me back in, and that one I escape.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
It's just different ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
Now this is the one I was talking about with the ladybird. Notice the lady. There's no hesitation as to where you're going to look. You're going to look at the ladybird, and you've not been led in by those leaves at all. You've seen the ladybird because of the colour.
Yeah.
And that's it. You're taking it, and the rest of it, even though these leaves are sharp, that is the subject.
Yeah.
And so this is still all negative space around it, and I think that's an interesting little image that sort of works for me.
Sorry, Brian. We got a couple of comments that.
Yep, no worries.
Looks like I'm the odd one out. People would prefer it on the right-hand side. So I'll just shut up and just listen.
No, but I mean, what we need on this, we don't need somebody to be right and wrong. We need to be people expressing opinion. The whole point there. There is no such thing as right and wrong, in my opinion. There's just opinions, and you evaluate them, and then you decide which side you want to fall on, or whether you want to create another one. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, yeah. We do We do have an
See?
explanation from one person though, because they say they're left-handed, so that's why they like to see it on the right.
Okay, left-handed. That's interesting. All right, I'll think about that one. I may
Yeah.
not come to an answer. I'll think about it.
Moving on swiftly.
Yes, that's a good idea. Anyway, here's another one. Now this one doesn't work because the background conflicts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even though it's nice and sharp, the flower is beautifully sharp. There's no problem with that. But all that messy background just doesn't work. There's far too many highlights. So that negative space is definitely working against the negative space of the other images. So yeah, I mean that's a no-no. I think everybody will agree with that one. Hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I have mixed feelings on this one. I've got all the bright areas in the background, which are pulling my eye through. But again, it's still an interesting image. But I think I'm going to have to come down and say that not as bad as the last one, but it does look better if you get it a little more out of focus, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've got one of the members just said that the good guys always come in from the right, stage right.
Do they? I'll have to watch out for that one then. If they stem me on from the left-hand side, I know I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, now this is where I was going to talk a bit more about proximity, because although the owl is the subject, actually this branch also is the subject, because he's sat on it and you can't distinguish him from it in this case. And it is fairly obvious that the background is this area around here and there, but this has got to be tagged into one. So what is interesting about that is if you actually change it to a positive and negative space diagram, you can see how it's working. And the interesting thing about this is you have actually three ways to get into this image. You can follow it down that way, or you can follow it down this way, or you can follow it up this way. And you're always going to end up at the owl eventually. So there's 3 points of entry on this particular shape. And there we are, that's the sort of ways around it. And you can either come down there and up, down there and up, or up that way directly. So that's quite an interesting concept. Another technique that's worth considering if your positive and negative space is working is actually turning down things upside down. So if you turn them upside down and then start to look at it, now you can see your positive negative space a bit better.
Yeah.
This is a technique I use when I'm doing prints. I'll print them one day, leave them downstairs overnight, upside down, and come down in the morning and see what I see. And if I see something I didn't ought to see, then I go back and re-edit the print. But it's a good technique for trying it because everything is so different, you don't see it. When you see it the right way round, you know what you're supposed to see. You know what you expect to see. But as soon as you do that turning round, it makes a big difference. It's worth a try.
Yeah.
Some examples of proximity on the left-hand side. Look, we've got that pole coming out the elephant's back. Not very clever, that is it? Very bad timing. Then on the one in the middle, we've got the piece of grass or stalk or whatever it is going behind the plant. That's definitely a no-no, that one. On the right-hand side, I've got the couple in the background there. That is definitely what I call proximity conflict. It's a problem. It's the thing is, once you've gone through this plant up to here, you're going to go that way and you're going to go out. It's the old thing about leading lines. If leading lines go out of the picture, you've lost the viewer straight away. Now this one here, they're over that notice. That notice becomes part of this. This whole lot becomes the subject. So that notice, especially text on, you've got to try and read it even more so. So it is definitely a problem. But if you've got it just that little bit earlier, before they've got into there, then you've got the chance of getting away from there and bouncing back into it. So that's a bit about timing, really. Anyway, that's about all I did on negative space. So this context was simple, or what I call contextual, containing information indicating where the image was shot. Contextual, containing the viewer's eye. That's another possibility. And then the defocus stuff. And then you've got the conflicting stuff, which is where you've got bright sparks and all sorts of things in the background that should pull the eye away. Balance probably was the hardest thing to sort of come across, working out what works and what doesn't work. And that is no doubt, whatever you do, some judges are going to like it, some judges aren't. And as long as you like it, don't worry about the judges. For factors that balance are the context, the texture, the information contained, colour, the saturation, and the contrast. All those elements adjust how the balance works and what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. Negative space can surround a subject tightly, but again, if it does, the judge won't talk about it. Negative space can go to the other extreme where the subject becomes so small relative to it, and the judge will talk about it and will either like it or loathe it, whichever. And proximity is something that doesn't matter whether you're talking about negative space or positive space. When you're out there, you really do need to be looking around your image to see if there is anything that's behind your subject that is going to come be part of it when you print it, and then either you're going to have a hell of a game getting rid of it, or just taking 2 steps to the left or right might make a difference and you don't have it involved at all. So that's where I went on that one. Yeah. Other than that, I've got the next thing, which was my group, which was a 30-day challenge, which we don't really need to look at.
It's amazing, really, because when I do the training with clients, I make a really big thing of that with regards to the elephant and the post. People with telegraph poles and pipes and drain pipes, etc.
Yes.
And it saves, if you look round your viewfinder at the time of taking, it makes a tremendous difference to the time you have to spend actually sorting the picture out afterwards.
That's it.
So
yeah. Framing is most important. Looking around the edges and the corners, the things at the edge and the corners actually have a lot more weight than you realise, because they pull the eye to that position and then poke out the picture there.
Yeah, we've got a couple of things for you to consider as well from the members. Doreen's just said, good idea to turn it to black and white. Hadn't thought of that, to show the positive, negatives. You know, it just gives you a different perspective on the image, doesn't it?
That's true, yeah. I started reading up on the psychology of photography. This is where a lot of this came from. That and the combination of using Michael Freeman's books as well. So that's why I sort of developed these little chunks, are you with me, that all last about the same sort of length of time.
Yeah.
Which means we can talk about that and then send them off for the camera skills group off for a month and come back with some images.
Yep.
And then when they bring them back, we spend the rest of the half of the lesson talking about their images and how they work.
Yeah.
But we only look at it relative to what they've been asked to do. So we won't, if it's positive and negative space, we'll only talk about the way they've used positive and negative space, not whether they've got it in focus or anything else. Are you with me? So it's just a case of giving them something to task to try and sort of help them sort of think about things more when they actually do take further images.
That's right, yeah. Another one, just Graham just said, very interesting how you sort of analyse the photos, and it makes, when you do that, it makes you think more to actually think about the image rather than just saying, oh, that looks nice.
You've got to get beyond that looks nice. If it does look nice, then you've got to find the reasons why. And that's where the skill comes in eventually. It's knowing what works and what doesn't, and things. It can only be gained by experience. I posted an article last night where I said the first thing you've got to learn to see, then you've got to anticipate, and then the third thing is a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
And that little bit of luck makes a big difference as well.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
I must be honest with you, as I say before, the more you try, the chances are the luckier you will get, especially if you start looking around your images before you take.
I think as well, I don't know whether you would agree, but if your members and the members of Dunholm, if we go out and take more photographs of more subjects, considering the things that you've said this evening with both black and white and composition and negative space, etc., then the variation does make you get yourself to be a better photographer in the end, because you're expanding your repertoire in what you're doing.
Correct. Yes.
So
And the more you sort of experiment, the better things work eventually. I do liken it a bit to like playing darts. When you first start off, you get quite good scores because you're hitting the board and you're hitting random numbers. The better you're getting when you start learning to throw at the treble 20, because that's the way to get the big scores, you're most likely going to drift in the 5 and the 1 on a regular basis.
yeah,
And so you may find that your results go down. Don't get dispirited by that because they will come back as.
yeah, that's right. Just to finish off within the last 10 minutes, do you have any of your images that you could just show the members at all?
Yeah, I've got a few. Just tell me when to shut up.
Yeah, well, we've got another 10 minutes or so.
Okay,
So,
there's plenty for that.
yeah,
Okay, I mean, I've just thrown some images together into a folder. This is a big orangutan taken at Dudley Zoo. I'll tell you what, getting the eyes brought out on that was a bit of a beast. The host so hooded, and the things around the outside of it, they're called plates, I think it is. And the bigger they are, the more attractive this creature is. So this is I mean, he was quite an entertaining character because one thing he didn't like was ducks in the moat around his enclosure. And we were sat there and he's all quiet and all of a sudden these ducks landed and his arms are in there flashing around getting rid of these ducks. He did not want them there. So that's one there. Okay. Now this one is, I included a few monochrome in this because I chose to go out. We have a camera shoot with the Tuesday evening group and we go down to various places. This was at Humberston. And again, I chose to go out with a 70 to 200 lens on and shoot monochrome. And I was shooting abstract things, so I'm shooting bits of grass. I've got an f2.8 lens, so it's a nice lens for doing the job, and so I'm trying to throw the backgrounds out of focus and sort of try and get a composition there. So we've got negative space, we've got some of it sharp, probably not quite enough. It's one that I probably wouldn't put too far into competition, but it certainly works in the monochrome.
yeah. Once again, though, you've tried it.
That's it.
It's,
And I try also, I mean, another occasion I went out with the 70 to 200 on and a 20mm tube and went to do some stuff in the garden because I got rid of my 180 macro lens and I've now only got a 60 on the Fuji, which is only a 2:1. So I tried using this 200 zoom with a 20mm tube in it and got some incredible shots out of that. That was a really fun day, that. But I didn't need my tripod with me, which was the bonus. But yeah, it's interesting.
yeah,
This is St Mary's Church on the Sandringham Estate, I think it is. There's a cottage in the back of the Sandringham Estate where the Queen goes to keep out of the way sometimes, and she will nip into this church sort of unannounced and go there for the services occasionally. So a friend of mine took me down there to show me where it was, and we also did Wolferton Station on the same day. That's an interesting place to go. Not full days in any of them, just a quick try. On this occasion, I'd actually borrowed a camera from Conley's because I was trying to look for a new camera. I took it back in the end. I didn't like it. I ended up buying the Fuji in the end.
Just as a matter of interest, from your own perspective, are you too concerned about the converging verticals in this the shield there? Does it bother you?
No, because I intended to do it. I'd gone out with I think it was a 10-22 lens on a 4/3 camera, and I wanted to do an experiment with the converging vertical. So I wanted to get the roof in and everything. This is relatively mild compared to some of the other ones I did. No, I mean, okay, they probably don't converge enough if you're going to go again competitively. I always say if you're going to make them converge, make it properly converge. But there isn't enough height in this one to make it do very much more, to be quite honest with you. It's not that tall. So, but yeah, mixed feeling on that one.
Yeah.
Again, if you like it yourself, don't worry too much. Just use it when you want to show something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this is a saber-toothed tiger's head. I got invited. Well, I went to the RPS macro weekend at Nottingham University, and they've got all these samples around the place, and you can actually take anything out of the cages you like, stuffed animals, all sorts of things, and photographed them in their studio. And this is just an infinity studio they've got there. And this is an actual saber-toothed tiger head, which you're allowed to handle. Trouble is, you've always got to wash your hands because you don't know what the hell they've been processed in. Some of them have been processed in some very horrible stuff, shall we say. So
Yeah.
be just a bit careful.
Yeah.
Good day, though, if you get a chance to go.
Yeah.
This is the National Mining Museum at Wakefield. This is the shower area there. It's quite an interesting place to go again. It's a good day out. Plenty to see. If you want to go down underground, you can. There's the shower area, there's the changing rooms, there's a blacksmith's forge. There's actually 2 pit heads there. And then there's also a nature walk at the back as well, so there's plenty to do. If you're there for a couple of days, you've always got the sculpture park, which is just up the road as well. So it's quite a good place to go for a couple of days, a midweek break, shall we say.
Where was that, Brian? Sorry.
It's near Halifax, Wakefield. Near Wakefield. It's the National Coal Mining Centre.
I do believe that I'm not sure, but we do the day group, and we go somewhere every month, and that might have been one that's been mentioned actually, so probably worth a visit.
It is worth a visit. Yeah, it's good. The other good news is it doesn't cost.
Oh, that's even better.
Be a little careful. They ask for donations, but it doesn't cost. The donations bit looks like you've got to do it, but you haven't.
Yeah.
But yes, it's well worth a visit.
I'm sure that somebody will have jotted that down to make a note of it for us. I must admit I haven't, but I'm sure somebody will.
Somebody will remember.
Yeah.
When you get in there, there's a donations box in the car park, and that's the last you see of it. I did actually buy a brochure, so I knew what was going on, but
yeah,
that probably cost me more than it would cost to get in, but it was worth it.
Yeah, I must admit that image itself does lend to, if you're doing it in Photoshop with that texture on the roof, etc., it does sort of lend itself to the texture slider in Photoshop, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I put this into a panel 3, and it got. I processed it too much. It was too dark. I put it into the color section, and it didn't. It was in the monochrome section. I did it in the monochrome section, and I pushed it just too hard, and the judge didn't like it. I did another selection of the lockers, and he liked that one, so that was okay. Win one, lose one, that's fine by me.
Yeah.
This is Lobelia cardinalis. This was taken with a 180 macro lens. It's in my garden, and the background is actually the pond, which is rather murky, but it's made a reasonable background.
Can I just stop you there 2 seconds, not to go back to the image, but just to ask you a question?
Yep.
One question that's been asked by Sue, one of our members, but has it got a tea room with cake? Because we have to have a tea room with cake.
You have to have a
tea room with cake.
Oh, tea room. Oh, yes, that's there. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
good. Yeah, we can go.
That's no problem. Yeah. I've even catered with something I could eat. I've got a very strange stomach, so that's a good sign.
Sorry, interrupted.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing you ask Colin Lusby, isn't it?
Yeah.
Has it got a tea room?
Yeah.
This one, I put this into a competition. The judge said, "I'm not sure what it is." I don't know what that animal is, and I couldn't believe it.
Right.
It's a baby elephant suckling, and I saw it in the zoo, and I took 3 photographs again to make it and put it into a panel 3. I think we got a mention somewhere along the line, so it was okay. But certainly somebody could look. They didn't realise the ears were elephant ears, so and I couldn't make out what the hell this was going around here. The hairiness of the elephant.
Oh God, yeah.
This one is played with. Surprisingly, not all that much. The actual aircraft was a B-52. If we zoom in, you can see there probably it's the Memphis Belle.
Yeah.
And it's the B-52, I think, if I remember rightly. And this is the one that I don't know whether you realise it, but Memphis Belle was partially filmed at Binbrook.
Yes.
And I was working with a theatre school at the time doing stage lighting, and some of the cast managed to get into as extras, so I was quite intrigued. When I found this aircraft, we thought it was flying at Cleethorpes, but it did this pass where it put the pseudo flames on the two offside engines, and so that is actually real. The bit that isn't real is all the background, and I've just changed the tones and everything, and then put the searchlights in and the sort of flak images to give it a bit more of a dramatic appeal.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. I enjoyed playing with that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this one's taken at Cadwell. We had another outdoor shoot in the Monday morning. This one, and we went and it was raining. Well, I got myself settled outside the cafe to meet everybody fairly early, and I took a few. And this is one I started to notice the reflections were coming through. So I tried to wait until somebody came with the right sort of colours to make an image, and also to get the reflections in the right place. I knew where he had to be on the road, and I was all ready for him. So I'm quite pleased with that one, because you can see his eyes near enough, but there's no spokes in the wheel, so
Yeah.
the shutter speed's just about right. I think it's about 1/25 of a second, something like that. But
Yeah, that's right.
I can't remember. Oh, Chastleton House. This is one of the staircases. There's two staircases in the building. The one at the back was very plain, and that's where the servants went. And this is where anybody who was coming to the house was taken. It's got a gunpowder plot connection, that place. It's quite an interesting place to go and have a look at as well. That's somewhere down south. I can't remember where it is now, but
Yeah.
oh, this one, the Anglesey Barracks. It's actually in Llanberis. It's the slate mine in Llanberis where the national slate mine is. And this is up on the hillside. Now, I'd seen this on a television programme before we went to Wales. I decided I wanted to go and have a look at it. The bad news was I asked at in the valley, one of the shops, how easy is it to get up there? And they said it's quite easy. You just follow the path and you get up there. The only snag is that Susan and I aren't very tall, so we followed this path, and all of the steps on it were that big that it was a mammoth step for us. We had to sort of climb up each one. I think, although it's only about 20 minutes, I think it was best part of an hour for us to get up there, and falling down wasn't much better.
God.
It was interesting because I don't know if you know the place, but the miners used to walk from Anglesey, which was about 9 miles away, on a Monday morning and arrive here and do a day's work. They would stay in the cottages, 4 to a cottage. They would leave on Saturday afternoon after work, and walk back to Anglesey, and took everything with them. And on the way back, they'd bring all the provisions for the full week. So we were talking, it was about 3.5 hours to get there each way.
Yeah.
And then do a full day's work on it. Oh,
Yeah.
they were hard.
Yeah. I must admit, I like that one. It's nice.
You know,
Yeah. I like
it's an interesting place to go and have a look around as well, because there's each one of these rooms has a fireplace and a bedroom, and that's about it. And there's no windows on the back edge. All the windows came out the four-way, so that you couldn't. They knew exactly what was going on. So it was interesting, but
Yeah.
again, such a great day to go up there as well. It was clever, so yeah, interesting.
That's right. Well, we've got up to around 9 o'clock, Brian. So
Okay.
I must admit, I'm really pleased that we've been able to entertain you this evening. And,
that's right.
and thank you very much for sharing not only your images with us. You've actually got me on the screen now. It would
Okay.
quite large as well. So I'd rather it be you large than me large. So
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
just stop screen sharing.
Oh, hang on. Let's go back there then.
Yeah, and that's it. And thank you very much for all you've done for us this evening. I've certainly
You're welcome.
enjoyed it, and I'm sure the members have. We've got quite a few comments just at the end there came in. People saying that I'm just looking at them now, that they enjoyed the images, and one Paul said that the plane is actually a B-17. I must have,
B17. I got the wrong one of her. That's
yeah,
near enough. I got
B17.
the right one when I did the article on it. But,
Yeah.
my memory's not that good.
Sue said, thank you very much, Brian and Graham. A very interesting evening. Bob said, very good presentation and some things to make you think and hopefully remember. Thank you very much, Brian. Bob is our chairman. So Jill's put, great evening, Brian. Thanks so much for a very interesting talk. Jim, you'll remember Jim. He was our ex-chairman for 2 years. Thank you very much, Brian. Very interesting and enjoyable. Tony's great evening. Thank you. So lots of compliments coming in for you from this evening.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed, and probably do it again sometime.
Well, you're welcome. I say, you know, I've got those sort of things. So if you want anything like that, you're welcome to have a look at them.
Yeah.
They're all quite short.
Yep.
Well, most are anyway.
Yeah. No,
I've walked off the wrong ones.
it was an interesting evening and an entertaining one. So thanks very much. And with that, I'll just say thank you very much to our members for joining us this evening. Once again, I think we got up to about 26, 27 this evening. So, sorry, in the second half.
Thank them for making the effort, because I know it's hard work watching the television all day long.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you very much, Brian, and thank you very much all the members, and we shall catch you all next week when we have David from Olympus who's going to talk to us. Some of it will be Olympus orientated, but there is also some generic stuff which you will all find interesting. So good night to you all from now, and cheers from Brian, and bye from myself. Good night to you all. Cheers.
Cheers.